with a speech entitled "Three Quarters Full."
Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, I tell you I feel very relieved having heard the earlier discussion, because I was down there and I was fretting. And I was delighted I was sitting on the back seat, and now I can tell you I'm relaxed. So I just hope I don't make an ass of myself. But sure, if I do, what out? Anyways, my name is Tom Flynn, and as I said, I'm a Covey by virtue of the fact that I was conceived and born here in Westport. I was born actually on Altamont Street, and to me that's the finest street in town. It's long, it's windy, but when I was growing up as a young man, it had tremendous community spirit, because as Joe Ring can tell you here, and indeed Mary Walsh as well, down there many of the houses on the street had half doors. I'm speeding towards the long book. Now for those of you who don't know what the long book is, it's the pension. Now that I've hit that magic stage of 65. I'm married to Joan, and we have 4 kids. 2 of them live here in Ireland, 1 in Surrey, and 1 in Westport, Connecticut in the United States. By nature, I'm very positive in outlook, and I don't see my glasses half empty. Rather, I see it as 3 quarters full, meaning that I still see myself with a considerable amount to achieve in the final quarter. I'm regarded as a thinker thanks to scheme or bit of research that was done on me some years ago. The problem with it is that I find myself in the situation making decisions for a guy like me is not always easy. That said, I would describe myself as slightly conservative, but somewhat liberal in outlook. Being positive in outlook is a strength of my life, while acknowledging the negative aspects. It's not an area that I like to dwell too much time on, because I find negative thinking is a complete waste of time. Politics-wise, and I stress this, I'm a Democrat. However, I did stand for Fianna Fáil during the last local elections. I have no regrets about it. Of course, the downside of it was that I had been away from active politics since I was about 25 or 30 years of age. So coming back into a structured organisation held for me tremendous drawbacks. That said, the political climate at the time, when I was going around canvassing from door to door, I must say I met many wonderful people who were very receptive to me. And of course, if everybody gave me the number 1 that they said were giving me, I wouldn't have been elected to the town council. Rather, I'd be above and down there. But that said, I was very pleased with the numbers of number 1s that I got, and I drew a certain amount of satisfaction from the fact that not only had I stood and been defeated, I don't see defeat as a negative thing. From where I was standing, I thought it was an excellent result, something very positive for me. Around 3 years ago, I heard about Toastmasters. I didn't know anything about it. It left me thinking a lot. But I did make my mind up that I was going to, at some stage, become a member of Toastmasters. One day I was reading the newspaper, Mail News, and the president here, Joe, he'd been interviewed by, I think it was Anya Ryan, and I thought, that's it, I got to do something about it. So here I am. Came in September, very much a tabula rasa, and I'm standing in front of you, my fellow Toastmasters, a gathering of equals, and I take what is for me a significant step forward in my own personal development. Now, what can I say about myself? I'm reminded of Jean-Paul Sartre, who once said, when one does nothing, one believes themselves responsible for everything. Now, having reflected on that, one can argue the merits or otherwise of that. During my short life to date, I've been employed by the reliable shoe company on Altamont Street, no longer exists. I later moved down to Westport Textiles, but first I was sent to Ypres in Belgium, where I trained for a period of time, coming back to Westport Textiles as a loom technician. Later on, I was to move to Canton in Massachusetts, and there I worked as a shed manager for Canton Textiles. I experienced redundancy not once, but twice in the 1980s, during that recessionary period. The people there complaining about how bad things are. Back then, things, relatively speaking, were a tremendous lot worse. I found myself in a situation where each time I was made redundant, I had to ask myself the question, what else can you do? So I always found that I was delving inside into myself to pull out the new Tom Flynn, what Tom Flynn could do. I went working as a statistics officer with Central Statistics, doing research work in County Mayo, Sligo and Galway. Later on, that was all contract work. Later on, I went on to work for County Mayo VEC as an adult education and development officer. And my job there was to organise the winter and spring educational courses for adults. I also organised what was believed to be the first ever lecture series titled Women in Politics, and was held here in Westport. That was a fascinating, if I can recall it correctly, 6-part lecture series. I also organised the Active Be Alive Week for County Mayo VEC, and that encompassed all the various sporting organisations within County Mayo, and they set up sports activities for a complete week, not just for young people, but for people not so young also. Later on, the situation arose where I just had to grasp the nettle, as it were, and I found myself in NUIG doing some very, very serious study to take an arts degree in English literature and sociology. Took my HDip later on, then went back in 2008 for some further study, graduating with an EFL. But the question I always had to ask myself, what else can I do? Challenges for me has always been a part of my existence, and I hope that's the way it will all be for the rest of my life. In between all of that, I was writing for 4 newspapers, the Counter-Telegraph, the Western Journal, 2 other newspapers. I was also working with Independent Radio Mayo, broadcasting 2 newscasts a week from their station in Castlebar. I also had recorded programs going out in the afternoon, where I went around very much akin like Jim Fahey, with interviews of people of some merit and what have you. Along with all of that then, I researched and published a book titled Westports of the Western World, and that covered the existence of 23 Westports, 16 in the United States, 3 in Canada, 1 here in Ireland, 1 in England, a Westport head in Scotland, and a Westport in the South Islands, New Zealand. And I'm very happy to say that the book sold well. The copies of the book can be found in the Library of Congress in Washington, in the libraries of governors across the member states in the US where Westports are located, in the universities here at home in the United Kingdom, in some of our own libraries, and other places too numerous to mention. I'm also involved in the Tidy Towns, Westport Credit Union, the church, and at the moment I'm involved in setting up a community watch scheme in my area. So as you can see from this brief introduction of myself, I've always been involved at community level in one thing or another. So volunteerism is very, very much part and parcel of my genetic makeup. Now, it's not everything, but I do find that service to others brings its own rewards. And each step along the path of my short life to date has been a very, very important learning curve for me. I've learned much from others, and hopefully I have made contributions that have helped others along the way. Unlike Sark, I do not feel responsible for everything, However, I do feel that I hope in some way that I have contributed at some level to the development of my own community and further afield. So lastly, here I am now in this wonderful organisation where I've been warmly received some weeks ago. Already I can feel the positive vibes and look forward to making positive contributions here in this organisation. And I do feel that the torch that is Toastmasters for me has been successfully passed on, and I hope going forward into the future that I will make a positive contribution to the Toastmasters Club here in Westport and to you, my fellow Toastmasters. Mr. President, Toastmasters, thank you very much.